Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the ongoing protests around Delhi and rather in most of the Indian parts, and regarding the new laws imposed by the government of India. Well, pretty interesting scenario out there, as the protests, they've been going on for the last almost 2 months now, and the Sikh farmers primarily, they believe that they can continue for another 1 year. Now, this is something pretty interesting, but what's the reason? What exactly is happening out there? That is a million-dollar question. So today we'll be talking about that. So let me read out it for you. Several senior Indian journalists are facing charges of sedition over the reporting and online posts about a protest by farmers last week, sparking criticism of the legal action from the media associations. So we'll be talking about that, and we'll be throwing light on this aspect as well. It further states that the cases have been filed with police in at least 5 states against the journalists, including Rajdeep Sardesai, a prominent anchor on the India Today television channel, and Vinod Joshi. He is the executive editor of the Caravan magazine. Further adds that in September 2020, India's parliament passed 3 controversial pro-corporate agriculture bills aimed at liberalizing the country's farm sector. They were subsequently signed into law and sparking farmers' protests across the country. Interestingly, from the Lok Sabha to Rajya Sabha, it was passed within a matter of 3 days. So I think the Modi government was pretty much in a hurry, and as they believe that they've been always supported by the corporate entities in India, and primarily the reason Modi won the elections for the second time and as well as for the first time. Now, it further states that according to farmers associations, the legislation does not guarantee the acquisition of farmer produce at the minimum support price, thus leaving them at the mercy of the corporations that are now expected to enter India's farming sector. This is called privatization to a certain level, and they'll be able to pick up the produce on a pre-negotiated price. Now, that is also something pretty interesting. It adds that last year, under Modi's Hindu nationalist agenda, Citizenship Amendment Act CAA and the National Registry of Citizens NRO came into act, under which Muslims were targeted and fanned protests across India. It says that the CAA blatantly excluded Muslims in easing the paths to citizenship of Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Parsis and Jains who had arrived in India from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan. The NRC required Muslims to prove their citizenship, an impossible task for poor, uneducated people who seldom register births. Now, unfortunately, this is exactly what is going on out there, and let's see where it leads. But according to the Indian media, a lot has been happening, and there are more than 2 million farmers, and they're not only from Haryana or Punjab, they have come from Rajasthan. In fact, they've come from all over the Indian side, and they are not only taking place in Delhi. It has spread to almost all the major states in India, and they want that the government should withdraw this particular law. But according to the Modi's government, this is something which is going to benefit the farmers. They'll be able to get a better price, and they'll be able to fetch good amount of money. But there are a lot of nitties, and there are a lot of problems, and there are a lot of issues regarding that as well. The farmers, they feel threatened, and whether they can sell their produce intrastate or out of the state, or there are a lot of issues regarding that. To talk about it, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio. On my right is Saima Shabir. Saima Shabir is a senior journalist and a writer. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your time. And we've also been joined in by Dr. Rifat Hussain Saab. He is joining us on Skype, and he's a senior strategic analyst. Dr. Saab, assalamu alaikum, and thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Faisal. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Sir, so honored to have you. And we have with us Dr. Raja Kaisar, expert on foreign affairs. Raja Saab, good to have you in the show as well, sir.
It's always a pleasure, Faisal. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time and talking to us. Let me put the first question to you, Saima Shabir. Now, whatever is going on out there in India, things are not what I think the Modi government expected. They've been there for the last 2 months, and it seems that they could be there for another year or so. This is the kind of behavior that we have witnessed. They are so committed, and they really want that this law should be abolished, because under this law, primarily there are 3 major sectors. One is about the sale of the produce. Second, the interest of the corporations and the farmers, they practically feel threatened that once it is passed, it has been passed actually, once it's imposed, let me put it this way, they would be left for nothing, because the corporations, they are so strong, they'll be able to dictate terms and conditions at a certain stage. You let's start off from your take, ma'am.
Thank you, Faisal. Yeah, Faisal, you pointed out very rightly that whatever Modi government is doing right now about the farmers' protest, it is going, it is like a blowback to the Modi government. Whatever they were trying to do, and by this slogan that they are trying to do good for their community, the services, and for the nation. So this is in front of the whole world, that what has happened to the Modi government and what they are doing and what is happening to the poor community of India. As far as the protesters, farmers, they are concerned, so let me tell you one thing, that this is a major shift in the policy of India, so-called secular and democratic India, to make a gap, to widen a gap between the small farmer and the corporate farmers. And secondly, what they are posing for themselves, India right now, that it is an emerging economy towards industrialization. They don't know that industrialization of India is not possible without the farming. So this is a big dent, as I see, in the Modi's government. Modi, as you know, that they have Modi's government, it always had a very extremist policy toward poor people, toward minorities, towards Muslims and underprivileged population. So these are only those farmers who are being affected, who has small land holdings. They won't be able to get access to the market as they used to during the Green Revolution, if I am not wrong, because during the time of Miss Indira Gandhi, this Green Revolution was a major shift for the policy.
Mid-80s, early 80s, yes?
Yeah, it was. So right now what they are doing, it is basically a big blowback to the Indian democracy, and it is a big question mark to the Mr. Modi's planning and its its strategies and its policies. So whatever India is doing right now, it is basically to widen the gap between the richest and the poorest. Right now we should know that
the equation is so interesting that 1% of the richest of India owns 73% of the assets in India.
That's absolutely right.
Can you imagine? 1% own almost 3/4 of the total.
Here I would like to add on that more than 500 or 600 million of people in India, they are living below the poverty line. So this is what India is, going upside. This is what India, what they are saying and what they are claiming for, that the rising and shining India. This is what India is.
That's the way they have marketed. That's the way they have projected
this
India.
Is only
and
marketing.
Unfortunately, this is what sells, and this is what people living abroad, outside India, believe in, unfortunately.
Well, unfortunately, let me tell you, this is to some extent now India has been exposed to all the world. With the protest of the farmers, not only this, this protest of the farmers not only has been, restricted to the areas in India, in Delhi, but it has also been in London and different cities of
all over
the world.
You will find the presence of sex.
Yes, this is the exposure. This has been exposed, Modi's policies, its agenda, and whatever it is terrorizing the people. How they are terrorizing the people, how much terrified
is
people
doing
are.
All what possibly is wrong or could go wrong, and yet he is getting away with it. This is like something which I fail to understand. But let me put this question to Dr. Saab there. Dr. Rifat Saab, now we do understand about the details, but when you look at the issues like the abrogation of 370 or Article 35A for that matter, in which the rights of the people of India, especially in Kashmir, the special status have been snatched away, and look at what is happening in Assam, Bihar and Bengal area, in particular the Manipur. I mean, I'm talking about the eastern side. people are protesting everywhere. Even people have come from the Tamil Nadu side. They are also protesting. Yet, Modi seems to be pretty stubborn. He is not going to change, because I heard him in his last speech and he was so straight, and he has actually accused his own journalists that they've been reporting, and they've been reporting correctly, yet they are in the line of fire. Your take, sir?
Well, first, a couple of things are quite obvious. Let me start with the first most fundamental thing is that India, many people thought that India is a right-based democracy in which interests of the people, their rights are given protection under the Indian Constitution. And Modi government has moved away from this fundamental approach, which is right-based approach towards democracy. What they believe is that the Hindutva agenda or their extremist ideology gives them the right or gives them the mandate to impose whatever they think in their judgment is best for the people of India. And of course, the farmers' protest is one reaction that we are seeing, along with the many protests that are going on, whether we talk about Kashmir, whether we talk about the minorities, whether we talk about, many parts of India in which people thought that they had a voice, and that voice was the voice of the people. So
Correct.
by ignoring or by muzzling and by suppressing the voice of the people, India has moved away from the right-based conception of democracy. The second aspect is very important. That is that why the Indian government or Modi government is trying to persist with the policies which are encountering massive resistance at the level of the people, whether they be farmers or the Kashmiris or the Muslims and the minorities, etc., etc. Because I think that Modi government is unwilling to change. It's not willing to accommodate people's protest, and that's why even the current protest that we are talking about have been going on for 3 months, and they had at one point they had suggested that they are going to suspend these laws, in which and these laws were rammed through the Indian Parliament. Farmers' interests and farmers' interests were not taken into account, and farmers were not considered to be a stakeholder in these farming laws. So, but the farmers have said this, and they are continuing to demonstrate, and there are 61 deaths that have taken place. And now finally, the media is also waking up to the reality, because Modi government thought that they could, by co-opting these corporate media, they could sell their narrative. But people are seeing now that that strategy has failed and it's no longer working. So my answer to your question is that the one reason why Modi government wants to persist with these ethically and morally blind policies, and wants to shove these policies down the throat of the Indian people, is because they think that they can get away with it. But mind you, when the next election takes place, which is only 3 years away, the Indian people, because they have suffered for so long because of the disastrous economic policies of the Modi government, whether this relates to demonetization and the whole host of other things, the people are going to take their revenge. And then I can predict right now that Modi government is going to lose badly the next election.
Badly in the next election, but I think the kind of damage they've already done, that's huge.
Of
And
course.
best part
Of
is
course,
that
yeah, the damage that has been caused by their wrong-headed policies, their totally misdirected policies, is huge. And India was known to be and Punjab and Haryana and the farmer protest the Punjab was known to be the breadbasket of the whole of India.
Sir, 50% of the Indian workforce is interestingly related to agriculture, And when
Exactly,
you talk about
exactly.
Punjab or Haryana for that matter, I mean, look at the amount of produce, I mean, which is coming from that part and which is feeding the entire India, interestingly. Now, moving on to you, Raja Kaise Saab, one thing, I mean, I really want to put this question to you regarding the kind of hurry Modi was in, because the moment it got passed, this particular bill got passed from the Lok Sabha, it was sent to Rajya Sabha, and after 3 days it was passed from there as well. We do understand that the opposition is pretty weak out there, and though they have been talking about it, but I don't think it has that kind of a thrust in their statements. But having said that now, sir, since this entire protest, it has, I mean, it's not only taking place in and around Delhi, it's almost everywhere in all the major states of India. And as I earlier mentioned, that 50% of the total workforce of the Indians, they are directly or indirectly linked with agriculture. Where do you see this protest heading, sir? Because Modi is somebody who's always been financed by the corporate culture and the corporate entities. And interestingly, whether you talk about Ambani's or you talk about Tata's or you talk about Mittals for that matter, these are the people who supported him and they want their return back now. And most likely this has been done on their behest. Your take, sir.
Well, thank you, Faisal. India is undergoing a very strange transition right now. Uh, the another competitor party, Indian National Congress, it has managed to lose its headway. And if you see in the past elections, the trajectory is very likewise, like it was there in the first 3 decades of Indian politics. Like for first 3 decades, there had been a complete absentia of opposition, and Congress it managed to make a complete headway in its first 3 decades. So today, when we look back at what has happened and what is right now happening in India, as I said, these things they can be rightly framed into two matrices. One is, indeed, as you mentioned, that there is a corporatist nuance to this very development, because all these financiers of BJP and the big, guns in Indian economy who wanted to have a lion's share and who want to have their monopolistic access to market, they are going to take over the Indian market. So that's one thing. Second thing, this has a political impulse as well. Basically, you see, with Modi 2.0, okay, his second tenure, he is he has unleashed a ferocious wave of Hindutva, which is very different than the first wave. If you see that his first tenure, it was more a kind of soft Hindutva. Okay, he cultivated an acceptance for this Hindu nationalism across all the ranks and files. Then he imbibed all of these institutions. In fact, uh, he colluded with all the defense institutions, air force, military, judiciary, and now his second tenure, which was a little plagued in the earlier with the COVID thing, but now you see it has unleashed something which is very uncharacteristic, like the revocation of the Article 370, the amendment in the Citizenship Amendment Act, and now these farmer laws. All of these things, they are more of the continuation and the persistence of the policies which BJP had been clamoring for the years. Now, since they have achieved a majority and a very convincing majority in the Indian elections, and they have vanquished opposition to the larger extent, so it has given Modi a liberty to accentuate and demonstrate his agenda, which was there on the card since long. So, what can you expect from a myopic Hindu leadership? Okay, and this person who had been a genocidal maniac, and he has on his credit the massacre of the 5,000 Muslims, and his entry to the world's largest capitals was banned. It's just nearly a decade ago, and now you see that that person has assumed the reins of India's uh, premiership, and now he is actually leading India to a very parochial polity. It is more of making a Hindu Rashtra. And then very interesting aspect, this Punjab, where he is targeting the farmers, had traditionally been the stronghold of Indian National Congress. So Congress always managed to muster a lot of political support from this region. So by targeting Indian farmers in this region, actually Modi is simultaneously placating and ingratiating his cronies who are his financiers, and at the same time he is targeting his own opposition, which is already though very fragile at this point of time, but he is giving or he is wreaking a havoc on them. So all of these things, they, if you put them into a cumulative matrix, so you would come across that India is making, as I said earlier, a very strange transition, and that is, India's tryst with secularism is over. India's hangover with its democratic ethos, it is over. Indian institutionalism and constitutionalism, it is again now a year-worn utopia. So all of these things, and you see that Indian forces, they have been doing chest thumping for BJP. They deliberately concealed the information of shutting down their own plan just to make Modi win. And then if you see that the statements of Bipin Rawat, you would come across as if he is a BJP spokesperson. So all of these things, they are symptomatic of a fact that India under Modi is more a belligerent, more a bellicose, and more of a parochial polity. So which is not at peace with its neighbors and which is not at peace with its own minorities. So these intrastate fissures, they are going to have a very strong impinging for the state and polity in India.
All right.
Because you see that the consternation is very ubiquitous.
All right. Now, Simon, a couple of questions. I mean, since you're a journalist, you've been very practical in this particular field. Now, when you look at the index as far as press freedom is concerned, that's called the Press Freedom Index. Out of 180 countries, ma'am, India stands at 142, 142nd. And secondly, the way, because those reporters and all those journalists, they were reporting as it was, what they were witnessing, they were reporting it, right? So their Twitter accounts, primarily the social media, Facebook accounts, and all the applications primarily used to, pass on the information, they were blocked. A. And secondly, ma'am, when you listen, or rather you hear this particular phenomenon of strange transitional period in India, what Modi has done, especially in his second tenure, I think he is in a hurry for something. Everything is being done on such a fast pace that it seems as if this man means some sort of a business, which a lot of people are not aware of. I do understand the importance of the corporate entities out there, because look at India, this is what their strength is primarily. But ma'am, at the same time, when you talk about the poor, marginalized, people who've been there and working, in fact, to feed the Indians.
Basically, Faisal, right now what India is exposing for itself through Modi, I think this is the true face of the India and Indian community. I would rather like to say, because if you see that the policies which India was following from decades, and it was like to move on, to progress about democracy, about other policies, about its leadership, about its IT, about its education, and about its judiciary, all the institutions. So they were moving on, and it was like no doubt it was like a progress towards India. But now, as people are saying, it is a very big thing which people are continuously saying, that Modi is enough to destroy all this. So this has been exposed to all the world, to all over in the world, that what India is basically. India is basically an extremist state, and they are financing terrorism not in its neighbors only, but all over the world. And this is the true face of the face of India. Look at Kashmir. If you see what from last 1 year or maybe more, there is no access of the internet. There is no communication available. So what is happening inside Indian occupied Kashmir? It is not. You cannot know about what is going on inside. Though few voices are sane voices are coming out, and they are linked towards the people, and now human rights organizations, they are also pointing it out that what India is doing about the its freedom of expression. So what I feel like that freedom of expression is not that if you are portraying what government is doing and you are portraying in the favor of the government. Look what happened when the protests were being launched, and how the reporters have been accused, and what is happening with them, the charge of treason and everything is going on against them. This is not
Treason
true
for what you're seeing, you're reporting, and you become the victim.
Indeed. And how can you hide it from international media? What do you, I mean, now
You talk about BBC, you talk about Al Jazeera, you talk about so many huge, big
Guardian
channels.
is reporting, Guardian is also reporting, and these are the media outlets who are from known for their credibility. So what are you doing? You are basically exposing your own self, that what is your mindset. Basically this Hindu extremism and Hindu extremist mindset is behind the protest, behind the policies, behind this democracy, so-called democracy. It is, I think, India is exposing itself. Whether you are talking about the corporate sector, the Mittals and the others who are supporting Modi. So basically,
Ma'am, they have
you could
invested
say
billions. They would
have
like to take out trillions.
So
This
then-
is the simple equation.
then
It works everywhere.
you can see that who are they and what are the narrative of them, what narrative they are supporting.
The narrative from their perspective is that this is going to give a lot of opportunities to the farmers, and they'll be able to have better rates for their produce, and
Well,
they'll
farmer,
be
poor
able to
farmer-
improve their living standards and so forth.
Faisal, now this is the poor person. He has to decide what he wants and how he has to lead his life. So, if you are making it more difficult for the farmers, I mean for the pesticides, for the fertilizers, for the electricity, for other things, how a farmer can manage to sell its crop when you are making a big gap between the two farmers. The big landholders, they are not protesting at all. They are not on the roads. They are very happy by these laws.
Majority who have about 8
But the
acres or
majority-
less, yeah.
Yeah, but most of the small farmers, basically, they are the one who are victim, and this is the one where India is splitting into two. They are getting polarized. There are the slogan of Indians that they are, having a class of it's increasing its middle class. It is all smashed, and all over the world it has been witnessed.
Negative
So-
10% is their GDP growth. It's
Indeed.
negative,
So-
and yet they are
So what do you
expecting
expect?
a miracle to happen.
And indeed, and if you see like what had happened in Jammu and Kashmir, after that, okay, we can say that okay, it was an occupation, and it was some kind of problematic thing which was they wanted to solve it by their own policies, about their own thinking and mentality. But what about their own people? Right now, the protests are not happening in Kashmir, not in Jammu.
It's all over
but
India now.
it is in Delhi.
Started
right
from there,
in,
yeah.
Right in Delhi, right in the capital. So what would you say about them? And as much as protesters are, the farmers are, they are committed, and they are there to sit and to raise their voice. So do you think that Indian government, it is in the position to say that, or to say that it is an emerging economy? No, not right now. No, they are, I think they are having a reverse gear towards their economy, not only towards their economy, to their democracy, towards their only all the law and order situation. If they cannot control this protest, so you can say that it is going to be another civil war.
I'm talking about the economy, Saima. Honestly, I was reading an article in which I was pretty, surprised to learn that India plans to acquire another 114 jets, and that is going to be a multi-billion-dollar deal for sure. You're talking about 114 just to upgrade their air force, F-15s or the new variant of F-16 for that matter, or Rafales. That could be another option for them. Some Swedish companies, including Saab, I mean, they're also in this race to get that contract. What I'm saying is they can spend billions and billions and billions on their armed forces, but when it comes to the poor people, I still remember I once visited India, and it was November, I think it was the third week most likely, and that was the toilet day in India. They had posters everywhere in New Delhi. Can you imagine celebrating or observing the toilet day? And I think that's the only country which is still, facing this issue that there are no toilets for
This
at
is
least
not the
60%
only
of their
issue.
population. Just imagine.
I
Look
do
at the
know.
number of people.
I do
And
know.
then-
This is not the only issue, Faisal. Let me draw your attention towards the issue of the rape.
Yeah.
This is a big issue. They have a lot of
Delhi
human
is the
rights
rape
institutions.
center.
Yes, it not only Delhi, this Goa and everywhere. I mean, what kind of face
So many
they are
foreigners have been
showing?
raped and
Foreigners
killed
have
out
been
there,
raped.
yes.
So this is a big issue. They are basically Jay Shankar's speech. I was just listening to that, and he was suggesting many things to China, that how China should look into the policies and how China should behave towards India and have a good hand with Indian policies and have a good friendship with India. But I was wondering that about Jay Shankar, that how he can say about this while he should think about his own house to put it into order. I mean, inside India, whatever it is happening, that is so awful, and it is exposed to whole world everywhere now after these protests, especially because usually they have this mentality to snub and curb and the policies to snub everything. But right now, if you see the Punjabi farmers, they are very much committed. And let me tell you one more another thing, a very interesting thing, that from the Bollywood, if you see, which used to be like a big thing for
Still is a big
India,
thing.
right? Kind of. After COVID, there is a kind of. If you see the Punjabi cinema, if you see their Punjabi cinema, they will never associate themselves with India or Delhi. They will always speak about that we are from Punjab. It is Punjab. So this kind of disassociation, you can see in their youth, you can see in their citizens, you can see in their population. Now, right now, most of the protesters, they are from UP and from Punjab. What is the fate of Punjab? This is a big question. This is not only the
Earlier,
farmers protest.
Punjab was huge, so Haryana came out of it, Punjab. Now people from the Rajasthan side, interestingly, all those which are bordering Pakistan, and interestingly now they're blaming Pakistan for these protests, that we are fueling it. Now let me take this question to Dr. Rifat Saab. Rifat Saab, whatever we witnessed on the 26th of January, the Republic Day of India, was pretty interesting. I mean, hundreds and thousands of Sikh protesters, they in fact got inside the Red Fort, and they hoisted their own flag. And a lot of reports have come out that maybe one of that character was from BJP and was known to, and he was inciting violence primarily, and he was also known to the Prime Minister. Now, what I'm saying is that Indians have always been involved, whether you talk about Pulwama or 26/11 incident, or even if you go back, the Parliament attack. I mean, this government primarily believes that, just do something, kill your own people, blame Pakistan for that, and that's the way forward. And a lot of people believe now that since these protests, they are not coming to an end, there is no logical conclusion, and there isn't one actually, unless and until they withdraw. The offer has been made that for 18 months they can freeze this idea, but God knows what's going to happen. But the only option Modi has left with is aggression, not only on his own people, but beyond the borders towards Pakistan. That false flag operation or something of that sort. Normally, whenever things go out of control within your own country, sir, the kind of options you're left with are not that great and suitable, by the way. Your take? Dr.
That to
Rifat?
divert, yeah. Faisal, can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah. What I was saying was that there is a very real danger of Modi government in an effort to difficulties and the stupid economic policies, and to divert attention from farmers' protests, they will try to engage in some kind of a false flag operation, about which our Prime Minister, our Foreign Minister, and our government has been warning. We have written letters to the international community. We have written letters to even the Security Council, drawing their attention to the possibility a false flag operation being staged by the Indian state in order to divert attention from its domestic problems. And historically, there is a theory which is called the diversionary theory of war, which essentially means that whenever governments they run into domestic difficulties, they look for an external scapegoating. And India, of course, because of its rise of its Hindutva ideology, has always been picking on Pakistan and describing Pakistan as its strategic enemy number one, along with China. Now, the question is that would India be stupid enough to engage in some kind of a false flag operation and heat up LOC, or do something, and that's what we have to guard against. And I think Pakistan should never let his guard drop against this possibility, and we should be prepared to meet all kind of contingencies. And in case the Modi government does something totally irrational, as they have been doing vis-a-vis their domestic politics, so Pakistan should be prepared to meet all contingencies, and we should continue to draw the attention and the of the international community to the possibility of false flag operation till such time the Indian the protest movement within India subsidizes, which I see no signs of, because the farmers, their protest has swelled into a mass protest and indigenous movement, and unless and until these laws, these draconian laws which are meant to favor the multinational corporations, are rescinded in favor of the farmers' rights, I see no respite from this prolonged crisis that India is in. And you had mentioned earlier that the Indians have billions of dollars which they are busy spending, acquiring all kinds of military equipment. But there is a fundamental reality that militaries crawl on their bellies, and when the belly is in difficulty, as we see in Punjab, the military dare not, challenge a powerful state like Pakistan, which is next door.
Now, Dr. Saab, what could be the worst case scenario now? The court has actually, come up and they've said that let's hold these laws for the time being, and they have also formed a committee where they'll be meeting. Do you think that could be a workable solution, sir? Or you believe that the protesters will not back out unless and until they withdraw them totally? Deferring them or delaying them, I mean, would not serve the purpose, sir.
Well, we have seen this. The Indian government has made an offer that they are going to suspend the implementation of these laws,
Till
and
18
the
months, yeah.
farmers have said no, and the farmers have said no. So I do not see any via media, except a far more brutal operation by the Indian forces against the farmers, which will lead to a lot of spilling of the blood and the killing of the innocent farmers and their lives. So the farmers have very little left but to continue with their protest unless these laws are repealed. And I don't see any flexibility or any option on the part of the Indian government that they will actually pull back, and they will try to provide some kind of space. So the matters have gone beyond the face saving. So suspension, the repeal of law, and that's the minimum demand. And I don't see any way. I don't see any possibility of the Modi government moving in that direction.
All right, now, Raja Saab, if two parties are stuck to that level, where nobody's going to back out, what would be the result then?
Well, Faisal, this is a defining and decisive moment in Indian history, and it is likely to define the contours of this state and society for the years to come. Modi has given and he has signaled in the past occurrences as well that he is not ready to back out, or he is not ready to back off on any of the things he initiates. By this, he actually gives a message to his staunch supporters as well that Modi happens to be a very tough and muscular leader who does not backs off. So this is one of the things. If you see that over the three very striking, rather unprecedented developments, one, the revocation of the Article 370, second, the amendment in the Citizenship Amendment Act, and then finally these former laws. We have had a very furious demonstrations, Shaheen Bagh protests against the Amendment Act, but unfortunately, due to COVID, that came as a blessing for the Modi government, and that movement it got a little diffused. So now these farmers they are inveterate and Modi government is obstinate. So now this is going to lead to India to a cul-de-sac because you see if Modi is not going to show any flexibility over this thing, then definitely this is going to have very climactic impinging for the state and society. You see, there are two things which they would try to do, Modi government. One, they would try to instigate these protesters to go for violence so that they lose the legitimacy because you see that they have been mustering support across the world and from every quarter and from all the concerned quarters, they have been getting moral support for their protests. So one, they would try to instigate them to be violent so that they must get a reason or a rayon d'etre for use of power. And second thing which they would try to do is they would try to use, as I said in the earlier part of the conversation, since they have colluded with all of the institutional frameworks which otherwise used to be independent in India, so now they would try to get respite from Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court might come up with a kind of ambivalent judgment with no convincing mandate or a sort of kind of win-win for both the parties. So that would more depend on the protesters whether anything short of the repealing is acceptable to them because BJP's history is replete with this thing, Modi is not going to back out. So this is going to persist and this is going to precipitate. So now the time would decide whether the farmers they show any kind of flexibility on their demands or anything short of the revocation of these laws is
They would not,
accepted.
the farmers will not back out because this is about their bread and butter. This is about their
Absolutely.
livelihood, sir. Why should they back out?
Absolutely, absolutely. So
They feel so
this is the
threatened.
dynamic moment, and I think India is at
And
the
Modi
verge
isn't
of
backing out either. So, it
revolution.
could lead to something which we shouldn't be surprised of.
And Faisal, India right now is at the verge of an internal implosion. You see that the consternation is rife and ubiquitous across the north, south, and everywhere. I mean, in northeast, north of India, and in these urban these Naxalite movement, then Assam, Nagaland, Kashmir. So what I mean, India is as I repeat again and again that it is through a very strange transition, and their tries with secularism and with the inclusive polity and composite culture is over. So now they are up to reinvent the wheel and to make it a Hindu Rashtra with a very furious and ferocious Hindu identity being put into place and which is very non-accommodative towards the minorities. So all of these things, they would, I mean, perhaps they are very short-sighted. Modi-led government, it is not perhaps cognizant of the fact that the Indian diversity and the heterogeneity was only being managed through this secularism and composite culture. So they are actually targeting the foundational basis of India. So if this trend continues, so it would lead to bifurcation of India, not into one, two, or many countries, and perhaps an impending civil war. So because the south of India, it has very striking divergences from the north, and they have their own grievances. Then northeast of India, and then this Kashmir, and now within the UP, Uttar Pradesh, and these things like cow vigilantism,
Yeah.
and this making and using the resort to use of brutal force against the minorities, against Dalits for that matter, against Sikhs, against Muslims, against Christians. So all of these things being put into picture do not sound any, I mean, they do not bode any good omen for India.
All right, Raj Saab, thank you so much for your participation. Dr. Rifat, it was a pleasure to have you in the show, sir. And thank you so much, Simon Shabir, for your presence as well. As they say that Lincoln said that, when you define what democracy is, I mean, obviously the oldest and the largest, I mean, these two democracies, they pop up in your mind. But he said that democracy is the government of the people, for the people, by the people. But in India's case, it seems now, if you rewrite that statement, it would be government of the Hindus, by the Hindus, for the Hindus. But these Hindus are not the normal Hindus. This is what RSS is all about. This is what the extremist people with a very weird agenda, they are trying to capitalize on. But unfortunately, this is going to lead India into some serious trouble. I think Modi has to revisit his policies, not only when it comes to the external affairs. I think he has to look inwards now. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.